Advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So thrilled to be back with you on this Tuesday. Before we get started and say too much, I have to just say, when we last were with you on Thursday, we said that we were going on Friday to the Future Horizons conference where we were going to be seeing Temple Grandin. It was remarkable. It was so much fun to see her and to see her speak. What an amazing conference that they had going on, and she was remarkable. Nancy Jackson interviewed her for the first time, and we're going to have that video for you in the coming days or weeks. Looking forward to showing you that. It was really, really exciting. We did have a chance to last Tuesday interview Temple on the show, so if you just can't wait, make sure you go back and watch that video so that you can see what she and I talked about here on the show. But nothing like seeing her in person. I really want to encourage you, if you get the opportunity to, Future Horizons has conferences all over the country. You can go to FH Autism for Future Horizons Autism.com and check out what their conference schedule is and find out when you can go. She signed books. We had 2 books that she signed for us, The Autistic Brain, her newest book, and we took those with us on Saturday when we went to the Los Angeles Walk Now for Autism. Okay, I talked about this event before we went about how amazing it is every year and how there's always a moment when I like to stand in sort of the middle of this huge place, this huge resource fair, and just look around and see, you know, this is our community and how beautiful it is and how amazing it is. I got to tell you, this was the best walk yet. And that's saying a whole lot. And I called Matt Asner yesterday. He is the executive director of Southern California Autism Speaks chapter and the person who was responsible for the walk. And I called him and I said, you really outdid yourself. At one point, it looked like a block party. There was an amazing band. I don't even know what the name of the band was, but they were fabulous. People were dancing. People were having such a good time. People were walking. We had a booth there. And for those of you guys who came and introduced yourselves and gave us a hug, oh my goodness, how much fun was that? It was so awesome. And to get to see your kids was just amazing. So we thank you for coming. We all have sunburns here. I have a sunburn on the top of my head that won't quit, but it was worth it. It was a really fun time, and to see, oh my gosh, how our numbers are. When they talk about 1 in 68, right, we all feel that thud. But when you see the numbers of people who care, that's a different number. They said they were anticipating 50,000 people, and we're waiting to hear what the numbers are, but I rather think they had more than that. It was wall-to-wall people, and the kids were having such a good time. We want to decorate a wall, and so we had this huge canvas, and kids came and we painted their hands and they put their handprints all over it, and to see the cumulative of it, of hundreds of hands on this huge canvas, takes my breath away. Absolutely takes my breath away. And we'll show you some pictures of that once we get it mounted. But truly, truly amazing, and so nice to meet so many of you. And if you signed up for our newsletter, you were entered to win one of those 2 Temple Grandin books. So we'll let you know about that a little bit later on in the week. But first, we have to talk about, and if you're new joining us today, so thrilled to have you here. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours, talking about autism from that 360-degree perspective, whether you are a parent, teacher, or a practitioner, or a grandparent, or an aunt or an uncle, or you yourself or someone that's on the autism spectrum. We welcome you here to get information and hook you up with the resources that you need. We know that this is not a one-size-fits-all. Oh my goodness, no. Big, huge spectrum, and we're all looking for different things on this spectrum, but we want to be a resource for you, a free resource. Emily's going to show you some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us here at the show and ways that you can watch the show. I'll remind you that if you go to autism-live.com, that's our homepage. You can see where the blog is up in the corner. You can click on the blog and free meditation for overwhelmed parents. We've recorded the one for kids and it should be coming to you soon. We'll keep you posted on that. But also on the homepage, you see that there's a computer screen. If you click on the triangle, you can be watching the live show or the most recently recorded live show. There's something playing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right at your fingertips. But to the side, that's really what I want to talk to you about. There are 2 long, skinny white boxes just above the whiteboard. And the first one says, Shannon is answering right now. So I have the ability to take a question that you guys send and put it up in that box. Sometimes I don't. And you guys have said, why don't you always put it up there? Because sometimes the person gives me private information and then I don't share it, right? But the bottom box there, the other box that's a little bit bigger, put your cursor there and start typing, hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen. You guys have been writing in through the weekend. I love, love, love the questions. And so we have the ability to ask our experts your questions in almost real time. There's about a minute and a half lag. So I always encourage you, ask your questions early when a guest is on so that we don't have the situation that does happen all too often where we thank our guest, we say goodbye, they walk out the door, and then the question pops up. So ask early. And especially for those of you who are not watching the live show but are watching a recently recorded live show, make sure you reference what you're watching. So if you say, I'd like more information about what she's talking about, remember that I don't know which she you happen to catch. So be as specific as possible. I'm watching the part where the woman is talking about potty training somebody who's nonverbal. I'd like to know, right? And then I know who to ask for the information. Now, we don't know who you are. You don't have to log in. There's no cost to ask the question. There's no lengthy thing where you have to say something 13 times on this form and they say you've completed step 7, only 12 more to go before you can ask your question. Hooey on that, right? It's automatic. You don't have to log in. You just put your cursor there, type, hit enter, and it comes here. But the bad part about that is that we don't know who you are. And if you say to me, I really want some information, that study that she's talking about, can you email that to me? I need it for my IEP. I'd love to, but I don't know where you are. So you can put private information, and then again, I don't share it because that's your private information. I will not put your business on the streets. There we go. Okay, so that's how you can interact with us. Tell us what you want to hear about. Say, why haven't you done a show about this? Shannon, why are you talking about this? I want to hear about this. Put me to work. Which brings me to my next point, which is that while I have a great many experts on this show, I am not one of them. Don't be fooled. I may sound like I know what I'm doing. I don't. I'm not an expert in autism. I'm a wannabe know about autism because I'm a parent. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He was with us at the walk. He is about to be 11. You may have seen him. He is the greatest shill there is. He was handing out cards saying, hey, my mom's got a show. That was my kid. He is the light of my life. Such an amazing young man, and I've been so impressed with him the last couple of weeks. If you've been watching the show, you know we kind of kicked it up a notch. Somebody kicked me in the butt and said, hey, you're not getting it done. So we kicked it up a notch, and I'm seeing the fruit of that, and it's amazing, really, really amazing. Now, am I lucky? Yes. Yes, I'm incredibly lucky. I'm one of the luckiest people on earth. Did he get a lot of therapy? Oh, you betcha he did. And I always say here that I have a lot to pay forward because we got lucky with information. I ran into the right right people at the right time who said, hey, you need to be over here and you need to do this and you need to stick it out and you need to have stick-to-itiveness to finish the job, and then they keep kicking me in the butt from time to time. I want to help you to be lucky. That's what this is all about here. I want to help you to get the resources you need. I know that your resources, that what you need is different than what I needed, right? Because we're all different. We live in different places. We have access to different things, and it changes, right? But I want to help you to access that in any way I can. So ask your questions. We'll chase it down. We'll do our level best to help get you the support and the answers that you need. Sometimes we get you more questions, but even that is informative sometimes. So we've got a big show, and I'm going to talk about we have two heavy hitter fabulous guests on the show today. They're going to help us to understand where we are, how we got here, and where we're going. Amazing guests, right? But before we get to all of that, we like to start the morning with something that we fondly refer to here as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out first of all, what does this mean? And what does it have to do with us? And what do I have to do about it? Right? I don't know about you, but I'm like, let's just clarify it. You keep saying this word or this phrase or this acronym. What does it mean? What's it got to do with me? And what do I have to know about it to get to the next level? Right? The jargon is overwhelming, but if we take it one little bit at a time, it starts to make sense, and it will help us to save us time and money. Is there anything more important than time? And if we save money, that's a good thing too. Okay, so today's term, and we're going to have an expert who's going to be talking about this term, which is why I chose it for today. It's ERISA. ERISA. Now, I don't know about you, but I've heard this so much lately that my head is almost spinning with it. And it kind of sounds like a pretty girl's name. I kind of want to name a little girl ERISA, but with an A, I think. So what does this term mean, and what does it have to do with us if we have kids on the autism spectrum? You ready? Okay, our actual definition, ERISA, means the Employment Retirement Income Security Act. Okay? It's a set of federal laws that set standards of protection for individuals in most voluntarily established private sector benefit plans. So it's not just retirement anymore. I think when it started, it was basically for retirement, but now it covers those self-insured plans as well. Okay, so we never like to leave it here because I don't know about you, I look at this and I go, how nice, a bunch of words. I have no idea how this relates to me as a person who needs to get help for my child with autism. So let's move on to our working definition, ERISA. Benefits that are governed by ERISA are not required to conform to state laws, only federal. So if you're here and we talk about insurance reform and we talk about how the mandate passed in the state of California, and there are posters everywhere in the state of California that say if you have insurance and you have a child who's on the autism spectrum, then you're now covered. Your ABA is covered. Woohoo! We celebrated, right? Except there's an asterisk there that some of us don't have technically insurance. Some of us have employers that have self-employed plans. In fact, probably more than 50% of us have self-insured plans through our employer, which means they're not insurance. They go under ERISA, their benefits, so those plans revert back to federal law. They only have to adhere to federal law. Mandate passed in the state doesn't mean anything. It has no effect on those ERISA plans. So I know some of you have been confused and said, the poster says I have coverage. I go and I find out I don't have coverage. How can that be? My employer must be breaking the law. Not if they're a self-funded plan. But a lot of self-funded plans do cover ABA, but they don't have to. So because they are under ERISA laws, which means that they are only covered by federal, not by state. If it doesn't make sense yet, that's okay. Stick around because we have somebody who's going to be talking with us some more about this. It's really important. This is a dividing line between people who get coverage for ABA and people who don't. And we need to understand that so that we can figure out which category we're in, because everybody wants to be in the category where they get coverage. It's just, we know scientifically that our kids are going to do the best if we get all of them ABA. and it's expensive. You want it covered by your insurance. Okay, so that's our jargon of the day. Let's move on to our question of the day. We always have a question for you. I don't know if we'll have a chance to check in on Facebook later today, but hopefully we will. We want to know from you today, what's the most exciting change you have seen in the field of autism treatment? What's the biggest, most exciting thing where you went, okay, now that's a game changer. That's going to change things. I know that by the time we started ABA was, kind of, especially here in California, it was kind of run-of-the-mill. Surgeon General had already said this is the gold standard of treatment. So, that wasn't something new. But I have said this before on the show. When I saw skills the first time and realized that people were going to be able to have access to the lessons that our kids needed to learn through ABA, the top of my head came off and spun around the room, and I shook for 2 hours. Literally, I shook for 2 hours. It was like seeing into the future. It was just amazing. So that was the most exciting thing that I had seen, but I know that there are so many things out there, and I hope that you guys will write in and tell us, maybe there's stuff that I don't know about. I'd love to know. So that's our question of the day. We always have a topic for our week, and this is the last week in April. Our autism awareness, our autism action, our autism advocacy month. So this week we are only talking about advances in autism treatment and in the field of autism. How are we pushing the envelope? How are we making things better, right? And to that end, we've got a couple of different things that are happening. First, I want to talk about tomorrow. I promised you that we were going to end on a bang. So we're doing a special extended show tomorrow. Instead of 2 hours, you're going to get 3 hours, okay? In the first hour, we have Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet will be here tomorrow morning, and she is going to be answering your questions in real time. We're still going to leave some time for that. But we've also asked Dr. Grant-Pichet to take aside some time. We asked her to pick a topic on something that she thought was cutting edge, that's going to change the way we look at autism, that's going to change the way we treat autism. And she said she really wants to talk about how games, video games, and computer games are being used to further what's being done in treatment in those down times. If you're a parent, that you cannot be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At some point, you have to cook dinner, right? At some point, you have to use the restroom. Not to keep it too real, but let's keep it real, right? And there are times when our kids love screen time. And so we hand them an iPad, or we hand them a Nobby, or we hand them a phone, right? And we give them a second to play because it's their downtime. They like to have their de-stress time too, and they're playing something. What if we could merge wanting to have as many teaching opportunities with that screen time? Well, that's what they've done. And so she's going to talk about how this whole thing is going to help us to get more done quicker and have the kids be happy at the same time. You gotta love that. Then in the second hour, we're gonna be here with Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And I asked Nancy, who is the one person that we've not had on the show that you really wish that you could share with the audience? And she said, Dr. Andrew Levinson. He is an amazing doctor who works in the field of functional medicine. And so he's gonna be here with us talking about what some of the biomedical advances are in the field of autism, some of the cutting edge things and the impact that they're making on our kids to get their health well, because we're not really going to get to the best possible outcome unless our kids are healthy, right? That only stands to reason. And then in the third hour, I have asked back, it was sort of my turn, what do I want? And I wanted David Humphrey. And David Humphrey is the CEO of Kirkman Labs. We had him on probably 6 months ago now, and he talked about some of the research that he has been a part of in the recent years, which is changing the way we are going to look at autism. It's changing the way we're going to look at all childhood disorders and diseases. He's going to talk to us about progress and possibilities, cutting edge things that are happening in the field of autism. So that's in the third hour. We're going to go one extra hour tomorrow. Pretty exciting. Gotta love that. But today is no less exciting. So some of the things that we have going on today, the amazing Shelley Hendrix is going to be with us. Now, she is the head of the Grassroots movement for Autism Speaks, otherwise known as Autism Votes. You're probably most familiar with those. If we have a chance, we're going to get to some autism news, but I got to tell you, the last person on our list here, we've devoted the whole second hour to. First time that he's going to be on the show with us, Dr. John Youngbauer, an amazing, amazing man who saw clearly what the state of California needed and what the children in California who were on the autism spectrum needed way before anybody else did. And so we talk about the regional center all the time here on the show. I've asked Dr. Youngbauer to come in and talk with us about that pivotal moment when they were figuring out what they were going to do to support individuals with autism and their families in the state of California, because they really have made a roadmap that a lot of states are following or should be following. So thrilled to have Dr. Youngbauer here. When I think about why my son has made the progress, you know, I always talk about CARD and how we got treated at CARD and how amazing it was. But the fact of the matter is somebody had to foot that bill because I couldn't do it. I did not have a nickel in savings by the time my son had a diagnosis. And the California Regional Center paid that bill and made sure that I was educated. I owe them a huge, huge debt. So thrilled to have Dr. Youngbauer here to say thank you to him and have him share his vision for all of you of what we need for our kids. Very, very exciting day. So we're gonna take a break. I'm already over time because I want to get Shelley Hendrix on here. We're going to be talking with her about the state of where we're at. Where are we at in terms of how many states have reform? What does it mean? Where do we need to go? And I said to Shelley, take us to church this morning. She's got some stuff to say to all of us, myself included, about what we need to be doing to show up in this community to push this conversation further, to take action so that we can get more done. It's really exciting. So don't go away. Stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm Ryan with Autism Research Group. We study ways to improve the lives of kids with autism. One of those ways is teaching safety skills, such as what to do if they get lost. We hit the streets to find out if anybody knows the correct answer on how to teach a kid what to do if they get lost. You're teaching a child
what to do if they get lost.
Yeah, you're trying to make them independent so they have the skills.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, give them a compass. Code name's good idea. Centurion.
We always have this whistle.
Oh, I'd also tell the kid, don't get scared. You're gonna be all right, man. This is just the world. This is planet Earth. You're at home here. As long as you're on planet Earth, you're at home.
As long as you're on planet Earth, you're home. This guy's a genius. With that flawless logic, he just solved our homeless problem. And as for the unique sounding whistle, although very cool, it'll probably only work if you're in close proximity. And a compass?
I have her call me.
Yeah, she doesn't have a phone. Parents are like, you're too young, you don't need a phone.
Establish some sort of like meeting place.
What if they can't find a meeting place? Because sometimes the kids get nervous when they get lost.
Yeah.
So like a backup plan,
Well,
plan B.
Yeah, I don't know. No, not really.
Let them go and find a new kid or something.
Yeah, I got a different one. Yeah.
There's not much you can do.
There is stuff you can do.
Like,
That's right, there is stuff you can do. In 2012, myself, along with my colleagues, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski, published a study in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis on teaching kids what to do when they get lost. The study demonstrated how 3 simple things, rules, role-playing, and praise, were effective in establishing these help-seeking behaviors. The benefit of this method is it doesn't require the child to have a cell phone or to have to locate a meeting place, which might be difficult if they're in a place like Disneyland. So once again, our method included rules, role-playing, and praise. Let's head back outside and learn about some of these rules.
They should yell out loud. Can't find my mom, help me.
Maybe yell out and scream for help.
All right, scream really loud,
Correct.
And if that doesn't work, then,
I don't know.
well, they could seek help from someone.
Find an adult.
Yeah, go to a vendor, say I'm lost.
Find an adult, like a police officer or a fireman or an employee in the store, and tell them, and maybe they can help you contact your parent. It really is that simple. You don't need to get your kid a cell phone. You don't need to establish a meeting place that they might not be able to find when they're lost and panicking. And you definitely don't need to give them a compass. All your kid has to do is 3 things. First, yell mom or dad real loud. 2, if that doesn't work, find an employee. And then 3rd, tell the employee they're lost. If they can't locate an employee, then tell them to find a mother with children, because that's probably the safest person to approach. I'm not saying that most men are predators, but most predators are men. That is a fact. I've read it in a fortune cookie. All right, so you've gone over the rules with your kid, and you've quizzed them, and they're able to tell you the correct responses so they understand the rules. But is that enough? How do you know they're gonna perform correctly in a real world setting? You need to get out there and find out if they can actually do it.
So you'd go over the rules and tell them like, do this, do that, but how would you know if they actually knew what to do? If you wanted to shoot a basketball, and I just told you, oh, when you shoot a basketball, do this, this, and this.
I never practiced.
You never practiced, yeah, so it don't matter how many times we go over the rules or how well you can repeat them back to me. It's not going to change until you get on the court and practice.
Maybe do like a, a little skit with them.
Like a role play?
Role play, yeah.
Your child, you're lost in the toy aisle.
Okay.
What do you do? I'm an attendant, walking around.
I'm lost, I don't know where my mom is. And then once you practice, you just like praise them, give them feedback, like good job, you did it.
Reinforcing it.
Yes, this woman wins the prize for best comment. She pointed out the most important part of learning, reinforcement. Now, in our study, we used praise, but for your kid, you might have to use something else. You might have to buy them a treat, a toy, take them to their favorite restaurant where they can eat unhealthy food and run around and climb through plastic tunnels that have the unmistakable scent of urine, and then play games spending $20 to get a plastic little spider ring that they will eventually lose in the ball pit. The point is, you need to reward your child for correctly demonstrating what you've been teaching them.
Okay, I'm gonna call her. Hello, your child, Ryan is missing. There you go.
Woo!
Yay!
So you tested it out
I'll
in the
try.
store to make sure I knew it. I had the rules,
Yes.
we role played it, and you made sure I knew it, and then like you said good job and all that. Now we're good to go.
We're good to go.
All right,
Done?
high five right there.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Give your child the rules, get out there and practice, and reward your child for responding correctly. For more information, please visit us online at autismresearchgroup.org. I'm Ryan Bergstrom. Thanks for watching. Yes, ding, no. Yes, this woman wins the first. Yes, this woman. Yes, this woman wins the best. Yes, this woman wins the first place. Yes, this woman wins. Why can't I say woman? Yes, this woman wins. What's the line? Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. It is our very special and thrill to have back on the show Shelley Hendrix. She is the Director of Grassroots Development for Autism Speaks. Shelley, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, it's such a thrill. And before we talk about what you do, what Grassroots is, I just have to qualify that you are an autism parent. And that you're a pretty remarkable autism parent. In fact, during the break, she and I were just talking about the fact that we want to have her back on to talk about how you get your child ready for employment, because you have done that very effectively. And your son has been very successfully holding a job. And so we will have Shelley back to talk about that another time. But today we've asked you to come and talk with us about Grassroots, what it is, and why it should be important to all of us. So do you want to take just a second to talk about what Grassroots development is?
Sure, absolutely. I have always been interested in politics since I was a little child and was always engaging my friends and trying to get them involved in one thing or another. And then eventually and I majored in politics also in college. And then when my son was diagnosed and everything just felt like it was turned upside down, I was trying to figure out how could I best contribute to back to the autism community to help propel things forward. And I had a career in sales and also had this affinity to politics, and thought, if I merged the two of those together and find some good piece of policy to work on selling to politicians, then maybe we could start to move things forward. And that was eons ago. Like he's 18 now, so this was when he was 16 years old. And what I've always believed and what I've always witnessed, whether I've been working on an environmental issue or working on autism issues or women's issues, is that when the people speak, and when they speak in unison, and when they speak loudly and persistently, things can change and things can happen. And I think a lot of times people in our country have a tendency to kind of bump along and not take advantage of the democratic process that we have available to us. And one of the best things about living where we live is that you can identify problems and develop a solution, hopefully a cost-effective solution, and then work forward from there to pass it through the legislature and change lives, not only for, in the case of our family, we didn't want to change just Liam's life. We wanted to use that as a vehicle to change Liam's life, but also change other people's lives. And in the process of finding other like-minded people over the years, all of that's eventually been very successful. And I work with a great team of people with Autism Speaks. We've got a dedicated team that kind of work around the clock. This is a big country, so we've got the Blackberries start going off early in the morning for people that are on the East Coast, and they keep going late into the evening. People who live in Hawaii and Alaska to try to make changes all the way across our great country, and the successes that we've been able to see in the autism community, especially over the last 7 years, has really, really been tremendous. Watching kind of this state march across the United States to achieve autism insurance reform. And while you have a good piece of policy and you can explain that with data and backup and getting your politicians engaged, the way that this really propels forward is when the regular average citizen decides that this is something that they want to work on and they want to push forward, and they take the time to do that. So without the community helping us push the boulder over the hill, I don't know if we would have gotten this far. It takes everybody working together and all of the things to come together.
Well, and we have to pause to say, Shelley, that you have been wildly successful. You have pushed a huge boulder in a lot of different directions and made tremendous progress. I know that it's not where you want to end up, but a lot of people have said this has been the most successful aspect of Autism Speaks visibly because you've changed the dial significantly for many people by going state by state and making sure that there is reform that happens in those states. So let's take a minute to talk about what the picture is right now. Day to day, I have a hard time keeping track of how many states do we have that have reform, where are we working on the reform, where are we at right now? So can you give us a snapshot of where we are today?
Right, well, like I was saying, it takes a whole team to do this. So we've got people who help keep us straight from a media perspective and from a communications perspective, and we have policy directors and our whole team and lobbyists and the grassroots, everybody working together, kind of like a football team. Everybody it's not just one person going out on the field kicking the ball and then you win. It's like everybody working together. So even and it's hard for us to keep up with. It's like popcorn every day, and just in the few minutes since we were talking and then now, we just got news, for example, from the state of Maine. We were working on some expansion legislation in the state of Maine that would raise the age of coverage from 5 to 10, and that was within the last little bit vetoed by Governor LePage. And now the legislature will be going back in on Thursday and working to override the governor's veto of that legislation, which is really important. So if you're watching this and you live in Maine, you need to open your email very soon, which will give you instructions on how to be a part of that and how to make sure that the community's needs and wants are addressed through this piece of policy, which will expand the coverage and allow more children to have access for longer.
It kind of takes my breath away, Shelley. I don't know why somebody would veto having, if you know anything about ABA, you know that you're not going to be done at 5.
Right. Well, you can use it. I mean, even, going back to what we were discussing briefly about getting Liam to be job ready. I mean, one of the things that was successful to get him ready to go work, we were working on ABA therapy with him at the age of 13 for 3 years to get him ready to be able to be job ready.
Yeah.
It definitely is something that can be worked on throughout the lifespan, and because you don't have the same issues when you're 2 as you do when you're 15. There's other things you have to learn. You don't stop learning at the age of 2, 3, 4 years old. That continues through your life process, and hopefully we'll be able to educate some lawmakers there in the state of Maine.
But let's be honest about the fact that when we're trying to educate a lawmaker, it takes a lot of voices. It really, I revert back to Dr. Seuss always. It's like Horton Hears a Who. If one person stands up and says, I want to educate you about this, it's not going to get it done. You need a bunch of voices. So,
right.
Go ahead.
And the thing about that, too, is that a legislator is not required to just listen to the autism community. That's not their job. Their job is to listen to all of the stakeholders. They have to listen to the insurance companies. They have to listen to the small business owner. They have to listen to the large business owner. They have to listen to just the average citizen who says, I don't want my health insurance to increase by even 1 penny. They have to listen to the autism community and say, we've got to have this discrimination come to an end.
Yeah.
So they have to take all of that information in, and what we have to do as a community is mobilize ourselves and concentrate and make sure that they receive a consistent, pressured, persistent message with the same information going in over and over and over repetitively. It's kind of like autism needs to be Toyotathon all the time. They need trying to sell cars, and like 80 million. I'm saying this because I just had to get a Camry. I decided to go get a Toyota because it was the end of the year, and I kept seeing Toyotathon over and over and over again. And the message stuck with me. So when it came time to make that decision, I drove on over to the dealership. And if we deliver that same consistent message over and over again, that it's cost effective, that it creates new jobs, that it stimulates new small businesses within the state, that it doesn't cause companies to shutter their doors and close down, that it's cost effective and it's only on average 31 cents per member per month. If we continue to deliver that message, and bonus, it helps. It's designed to provide healthcare access for children who need it,
right,
and can benefit from it directly. And
okay, so we have to be a dog on a pork chop about this. We need to keep letting them know on a regular basis. Okay, so let's talk about what the current state map is. I think Emily has a snapshot of where we are in terms of state reform. So tell us a little bit here. The dark green states, those are states that what?
Okay, so I can't see you guys. So I feel like I'm in the universe somewhere hanging out. Okay, so the states that have passed it, there's 36 states that have passed some measure of autism insurance reform, and all of these states vary pretty wildly. Some of them provide coverage up to the age of 6. Some of them have no age cap at all. Some of them have been an evolving process. We've gone back into some states and expanded laws. Texas is a good example from that, where it started out coverage up to the age of 6, and then it was 9, and then it went to a little more, and now they have no age cap at all. So we're committed to going back and continuing to work on things. Even Maine, as an example, where they had coverage up to the age of 5, and now we're trying to double that up to the age of 10. So the work is not done in those 36 states by any stretch of the imagination, but in those 36 states, you do at least have a chance for some sort of autism coverage, and that's all very well explained on our autismvotes.org website. And we also have a tool on there. It's our autism insurance toolkit, which will help you kind of navigate and determine what type of insurance you have and whether or not you have coverage and what that coverage means for you and for your family. But we passed 2 states last year. We passed Minnesota and Oregon, and then so far this year, we've been able to pass legislation and enact it in the state of Utah and also in the state of Nebraska. There was an expansion bill that was passed and enacted in the state of Kansas. We had a number of states that we worked really hard in and were not able to achieve the goals, got close, but weren't able to achieve the goals this year, and we'll have to go back and revisit that later. We have a couple of states that are getting ready to emerge that we're going to be working in, notably North Carolina, which is going to have a very, very significant push. They have a short session and it's going to be all hands on deck in the state of North Carolina. Like, if you know someone who lives in North Carolina and they don't have a child with autism, they live there, you can call them and say, hey, could you do me a solid and call and help on this bill too? We need people outside the autism community that are calling and helping as well. And in the state of North Carolina, we passed it through the House last year, so we just have to get through the Senate this year and then on to the governor.
Okay, so North Carolina is a state that's going to. Is there any place else that we've got a bit of a battle coming up that you need all hands on deck as well?
We're anticipating that legislation will emerge in the state of Ohio as well. They're still kind of shaping how that'll work. Ohio has a legislature that's in session for the majority of the year. Most of our states have sessions that only happen in spring. So the states that Ohio's going to be coming down the pike, hopefully.
Okay. So my question now is, for people, you mentioned open your email, but I think that there are people out there that aren't going to get an email. So what do people need to do to get in tune with what's happening, and then once they're in tune, to be able to take action?
Right. So we try to make things really easy. And, I know what it's like to be a mother, to have a child with autism, and all of the things that entails, and balancing out the life of your neurotypical child to make sure that she's not crazy or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in people's daily lives. And part of our mantra this year is to remind everybody to take 5 to advocate, just 5 minutes. And we try to make it super, super easy, but that kind of starts with a little bit of personal responsibility as well. And so by registering at Autism Votes, if you go to autismvotes.org, and or if you go to autismspeak.org and click on the Advocacy tab, it'll bring you to a page, and up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a registration button. So that's the first step, is make sure that you're registered to receive emails that we send out to call you into action. And then once you have signed up for that, if you receive an email from Autism Votes, then please open it, and usually inside it follows a pretty basic formula where it explains what the issue is in the first paragraph or two, so that you kind of have an idea of what we're working on. And then there's 3 quick steps, which usually follow a formula of make a call, send an email, and then post it to social media and spread it and ask your friends to participate and help you do this as well. And what we're aiming for there is not only inside the autism community, but just your friends. Like, I live in Baton Rouge, and sometimes when we're working on initiatives here in Louisiana, or if we're working on initiatives at the federal level, I'll say, look, we really need your help. Do this to help Liam. All I need you to do is fix the phone and make this quick phone call, say this, call our senator or call our congressman or call this legislator or whatever. We usually include a small script, so that if you feel nervous and you feel like you don't know what you would want to say to your legislator, there's no excuse for that, because we include a script and all you have to do is it. And then when it comes to the email, you don't have to craft your own letter. We've already got a pre-drafted letter that we prefer if you personalize it and make it a little bit of your own. Nobody wants to repeat the same thing over and over again. But if you really are too busy and things are crazy that day, just get on there, type in your information, click send, take 2 seconds, and then again, share the message. And usually there's a cut and paste, like post this on your Facebook, to give people a really easy chance to spread the word.
You really do make it easy. I have to say, Shelley, there should be no excuses. You definitely make it easy. So I want to urge everybody, first of all, sign up so that you can get that contact. And then we all have to be able to open our email and follow through. When you say 5 minutes to advocate, you're talking about 5 minutes a day.
I'm talking about 5 minutes a day, but not necessarily with your politicians every day, because you can impact and help educate people everywhere you go. So, and when you do that, it allows you to sort of get your elevator speech down pat and understand what it is that you're working on. It helps you get it to where you can rattle it off really easily when you do call and speak with a legislator. So, while you're standing there getting your groceries, and you're at Target or the grocery store or whatever, and they're checking you out and you have a captive audience, tell that person what you're doing, why autism is important to you, how they can help make a difference. And whether they do it or not, it helps you come up with that speech and feel more confident about what you're working on, but it also might educate them as well, and it starts that conversation. And you never know when they're going to turn around and say, I have a nephew with autism, I have a little brother with autism, I don't even know about this program, I'd be happy to help, give me more information. And the more that we do that, talk to the dry cleaner, the banker, the person filling up your gas, if you live in New Jersey, you can still do that, or, wherever, getting it outside the autism box is really important.
Really important. All right, we are going to take a break, and as we go to break, we're going to be showing you a new spot that was put out by Autism Speaks yesterday, and then we're going to be back more with Shelley Hendrix, Grassroots from Autism Speaks. Stick with us.
Learn the early signs of autism today, because an early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
Hey, I made your favorite.
With real egg noodles and bite-sized chicken, Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup is the one kids love. Mmm, good.
Come and get the song.
Thanks. Stream your favorite content when you want. AT&T.
He didn't speak till he was almost 5. There's a time when my wife and I just didn't think we'd ever have a conversation with him, and now he can build and program computers from scratch. So we kind of really consider ERISA a huge success story.
Sounds like you got a pretty good dad too.
Yeah, he is a really awesome dad.
That's beautiful. We are here with Shelley Hendrix, and she is the head of Grassroots, the director of Grassroots for Autism Speaks. We're talking about how we can take 5 minutes every day and advocate. Now, we just went through some of the different things that are happening state by state. We didn't talk about Hawaii. And tell us a little bit about what recently went on in Hawaii, because there's an interesting statistic that's come out of this that everybody's talking about.
What happened in the state of Hawaii, we were very disappointed last week because it looked like we were going to be able to achieve autism insurance reform at the state level in Hawaii. And in the end, they decided they needed more information on how much passing that legislation would cost. And we certainly feel like at Autism Speaks that this has been studied enough. Clearly 36 states have studied it and decided that it's cost effective and worthy of passing. But every single state has a tendency to say that, we want our own data, we want our own study done, we want to know what this means for Hawaiians, which is understandable. And we had the same issue in Mississippi. In Mississippi, we got a bill through the legislature, and then they converted it to a study as well. And so they'll be studying it over the summer.
But Autism Speaks made a statement about how much it would actually end up costing each Hawaiian to include this coverage, by having this reform. And what they said was, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 31 cents?
On average, the data that we've been able to collect has indicated that on average, the cost per member per month is a 31-cent increase, and I just want to remind people what 31 cents is. That's 1 quarter and 1 nickel and 1 penny every month. And that 1 quarter, 1 nickel and 1 penny every month, it can help a child lead a more independent life. It can help an adult lead a more independent life. It can help bring a child from being a tax consumer to a taxpayer. And it's a worthy investment for us to make as a society to ensure that they have appropriate access to the medical care that they need.
And when you put that 31 cents together across a year, because people say, well, that's 31 cents a month. And when you put it across a year, it totals, and correct me if my math is wrong, $3.74 a year, right, which is less than most cups of coffee at Starbucks.
Exactly. Or a gallon of gas.
Yeah.
Our gas is running about that right now in Louisiana. So, you know, it's really, and you know, you can find that in your couch. You can find
yeah. And underneath the floor mat in my car, you can find that. So, Emily, would you put that slide that you were just showing back up? Because I wanted to talk a little bit, Shelley, about how you came up with the 31-cent figure. She's showing the slide right now that lists South Carolina, Illinois, Louisiana, Florida, and Arizona. And so are these actual numbers for what it cost them in year 2?
So in each one of those states has coverage for their state employee health plan. It's difficult for us to get information about private coverage back from insurance companies. But with regard to state employee health plans, because that's paid for by taxpayers, we can obtain that data and we can find out how much it's costing those plans to implement the legislation that was passed. And so for all of those states that are listed on that slide, the program or the legislations have been in effect for 2 years. And that was each one of them has a little bit of a different cost. I think I can't see it right now, but I think Louisiana is like 40 cents.
Yeah. So Louisiana, South Carolina looks like the most expensive, but it averages out at 31 cents. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on average, it comes out to be approximately 31 cents. And the reason that is so incredible is that when we were passing legislation, I think I sent you guys another slide, I might not have, that shows the projected and the estimated cost. When we were passing that legislation, every state's required to do a fiscal note and decide how much it's going to cost. They run the numbers and they say this is how much it's going to cost. And we have some states come up with crazy numbers. Like a couple of years ago in Georgia, they were saying it was going to cost $3 trillion, which is crazy. But even in the states that did a pretty good job of getting decent fiscal note back to us, their projections still were really far off. Our own projections through Autism Speaks were far off. Once this gets actually implemented and utilized by people, what we're finding is it doesn't cost nearly as much as anyone would.
And I think we all need to be informed about that. So when we're doing our elevator pitch to people in line at Target and saying to them, did you know that it really would only make your policy go up 31 cents to do the right thing? To do the right thing and to create a world in which our kids have potential and possibilities. I think that makes it a little bit different. Now, we do a jargon of the day every day, Shelley, where we take a term and we try to demystify it a little bit here. And our term today was ERISA, just so that we would be ready to have this conversation with you, because there's a lot of misunderstanding even in the autism community, but especially outside the autism community about, I've had people here in California say to me, I thought you were done with that. We passed that insurance reform for you. Isn't everybody insured now? And then I have to get into a discussion with people about ERISA. So, and people are asking us, when is this going to change? What would it take for everyone to have access to coverage, not just the people that are covered by state laws?
Right. So that is the $3 trillion question. So, what does it take? I mean, you would have asked me 7 years ago if we would still be working this hard 7 years later to try to get appropriate medical care coverage for people with autism. I just would have looked at you like you were crazy. I just can't believe it's taking so long. And yet we've made a significant amount of progress. Like I said, 6 days is nothing to sneeze at. That's a huge accomplishment. What typically has to happen in order for the federal government to take any sort of action, and in order for ERISA regulations to be changed, that's what would have to happen. It would have to change at the federal level. But what they always want to see is see some momentum in the states. Well, obviously we have that momentum in the states. Now we, at some point in the future, are hoping that we'll be able to flip the switch and be able to work on it at a federal level. I'm not sure exactly when that'll happen. But all of this work in the states has been helping us build a case to be able to make those changes as the federal government. ERISA changes don't come along very often. With regard to healthcare coverage, it has to be something that needs to be taken care of uniformly. So some examples of ERISA legislation that has passed previously are like when you and I were having our children, it was standard practice to do the drive-through delivery method where you have the child and then they put you in the car and send you on your way. And and you don't stay in the hospital for any length of time. And groups got together and passed that state by state, and then went back and changed the law at the federal level, saying, you know, moms might need to stay in the hospital for a little while after they have a baby, or provide coverage for specific issues with regard to breast cancer. So it has changed a little bit here and there over the years, and we're hoping that all of this momentum will eventually change at the federal level. So what does that mean that doesn't mean anything for somebody who's watching this. So can you guys put up a little pie chart that I sent to you, the pretty little pie chart? Whenever I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'll say, what kind of health care coverage do you have? And the response almost always is, well, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, or I have, you know, Cigna, or I have United Healthcare. They cite what the company is, and they don't know, and I didn't know this either until we started working on this project, that your health care insurance is determined based on how that health care is regulated and what type of job you hold. So if you work for, some people have individual coverage because they've just purchased individual policies. Some people work for a small company. Some people with less than 50 employees. Some people work for a larger state-regulated company with 50 or more employees. Some people work for a huge conglomerate company, which might operate in several different states. Typically, those are federally regulated. So companies like Lowe's or Walmart or McDonald's, big, huge companies like that are what fall under the ERISA legislation, under the federal legislation. So even if this bill has passed in the state level, and the scenario that we have now is we may have two families living with autism 5 doors down from each other. And one child's parent works for a company that's state regulated, and they have access to get all of the therapy that their child needs to do better. And then we have another family that works for Exxon and that doesn't have coverage, and then they are not able to get the same level or quality of care because they can't afford it. They have to pay out of pocket for it, and they can't get reimbursed for their expenses through insurance. And at some point, we believe that they're going to have to step in and even out that disparity and end that discriminatory practice. And the reason I wanted you to look at the pie chart is because it shows all the different ways people access health insurance coverage, whether it's, again, individual, small, large business, federally regulated healthcare, whether you have it through the military or you have it as a federal employee or a state employee, or you're uninsured, or you're on Medicaid. There's so many different ways, and that's why we have to work as hard as we can and have everyone working together, because we're going to have to continue to pull each other up the mountain. Once we get it accomplished in a state, we have to go back and try to do a little more, try to handle things at the federal level. We hear a lot of times, for example, when we're trying to help our military families pass this legislation, people will say to me, as a grassroots person, they'll write me back and they'll say, well, I don't need to do this because I'm not in the military. Well, all need to help our military families. We need to help them obtain the coverage that's necessary. They're making a tremendous sacrifice for our country. But outside of that, we just need to help. We need to help our brothers. We need to all help each other. I mean, when I don't have ERISA-based legislation, and even if I was just average Joe citizen, I would feel compelled to make sure that my neighbor down the block had the opportunity to have the same kind of access to health insurance coverage that I have now.
Absolutely. And, unfortunately, Shelley, we're like really out of time, and we're not going to get to all the things that I wanted to talk, so we have to have you back. But I wanted to give you just a minute to talk to us about this advocating for 5 minutes and to further what you're saying about how important this is. I have been guilty of this in the past, that when you send me something and say, do this, I do it that day. And then I go and do other things because I think I'm doing something. But I really have not been good about doing 5 minutes every day. And I want you to just take a minute to talk to us about why we've got to do that.
Well, the reason that we have to do that, I think, and I'm going to have a blog hopefully coming out about this at the next week or so, recapping a survey that we just did, and we found out that 86% of the people who took the survey felt like health insurance coverage was one of the most important things that is on our list of things to do. And then, also education and research and jobs and housing and this long laundry list of all these things that we need to get accomplished. And then we asked, how often have you contacted your state legislator or your congressman? And it was anywhere from 50 to 75% of people saying, I've never done that. Well, if you want to see the change, then you have to be the change and you have to participate in this. And we've got to stop relying on people to do that for us. And right now, whenever we send out an email, maybe 15% of the people that we send the emails to will open them. Even fewer will do the objectives that are on the inside. So we need to flip that around where we have 85% of the community working on these things, because that way we would be able to get these things done, be a louder voice, get them done more quickly so that we can move on to whatever the next objective is. We with all of these children moving into adulthood, we have a long list of things that need to be accomplished that are it's going to require a private-public partnership to make sure that these things happen.
And you said something to me earlier this morning. You said, sometimes as parents we'll spend 3 hours on the phone with an insurance company arguing with them, and then we say, I don't have time to advocate because I don't have 5 minutes to do this. I know you got to spend 3 hours with the insurance company, but then spend that 5 minutes, because if we all spent that 5 minutes, then nobody would have to make that 3-hour phone call.
Exactly. And I would, that's a good thing. I was glad to get that time back in my life.
Me too.
And, if you can make things better by all working together to make that change, then everybody, can you find something else to do with that 3 hours? Sleep, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
4 hours of sleep instead of having to pour over, what you're going to do to fight with the insurance company to be reimbursed for a service that you paid for.
Shelley, we think you're remarkable. We're going to schedule more time with you because we've got to have you back here more often to clarify these things for us and light a fire under us. But again, we want to urge people to go to autismspeaks.org, click on the Advocacy tab, sign up for the newsletters. But that's only the first step. You've got to make sure you open it and take the initiative and take 5 minutes. Let's all commit to 5 minutes. Let's support Shelley. She's out there and she's moving and shaking. We have to be her backup.
Great. Backup.
Yes. We'll do a little shoop behind you. Thank you so much for being with us. We hope that you have a great finish to this amazing month.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Take care. Again, Shelley Hendrix, an amazing, amazing woman with a great deal of energy, but she cannot do it by herself, you guys. And I really heard this morning when she was talking about this. I was like, oh, this is me. I've been guilty of this. Not being consistent. 5 minutes every day. Find that time to advocate. It's like drinking the water that we have to drink. We need to do this because until we all come together and advocate together, we're not going to get where we need to be. All right, really remarkable. We have to take a break and go to the A Word. This is the ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And we're following Jack Riley, a little boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, as he begins his early intensive behavioral intervention. And we see the benefits of what this kind of a program that we're talking about trying to make sure that everybody gets. So take a look at this. When we come back, we are going to have, for the first time on our show, I'm so honored and thrilled, Dr. Youngbauer is going to be here with us, and he's going to talk with us about the regional center here in California, how it came into being, and what the long-term vision was and is. And I am going to say thank you, because I wouldn't have my child if it hadn't been for the California Regional Center. So first, take a look. This is the A Word.
Hi, Jack Riley. Are you in the pool? Say hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
He said that twice. We're just getting the camera.
Hi, Suzanne.
How is everything?
Everything is good. We just actually increased our hours. So that's a little overwhelming. It includes pretty much therapy from 8:30 till about
6 p.m.
6 o'clock minus his nap time. So that's challenging, but he's doing great. 6 months ago he had 0 words. Now I don't think I can count that high. He's got so many words.
And the 25 hours, so is that strictly ABA or is that ABA plus?
That's
other
ABA
things?
plus 2 hours of speech therapy per week plus 2 hours of OT per week.
So it's almost 30 hours, 29 hours.
He works almost more than we do.
So let's say that's like as long as my work week.
Yeah, he's got a full-time job for
a 2-year-old.
A little 2-year-old with a full-time job.
Mouth. Oh, a mouth. Where does the mouth go? Oh, nice job. So he has hands, eyes, nose, and a mouth. What else does he need? Does he need ears? Oh, there's one ear. What else does he need? Shoes. Where is his shoes? You're gonna put feet? Okay. What else does he need? Oh, a hat. Which hat is he gonna put on? That one? Say hi, Suzanne. Hi, Susan. Hi, Jack Riley.
We were diagnosed November of last year, so it's been 7 months since we've known that he has autism. He started speech therapy a month later, occupational therapy, probably within a few weeks of that, and then ABA we've done for 3 months, April, May, and June.
Right.
And really, I think ABA, I don't want to compare it to the others, but I mean, we've seen a huge impact on him. And
It's 20 some odd hours,
right.
compared to 2 and 4 or whatever. But yeah, he's changed dramatically since ABA started.
And it was hard in the beginning. We just even the biggest example I always come up with is they made him say his colors before he could use a marker to color, which was his thing at the time.
Do you want green or orange? Which one's orange? Green or orange? Orange, yeah. Good job.
So what's like the differences between before you started therapy and to what the kind of kid he is now?
I actually have not full days, but very large portions of partial days where I forget about autism and just think I have a 2-year-old. Specifically, he plays with us. He engages us. He's funny. He sort of makes jokes. I don't know how to explain that, but he does.
Oh, you got it.
The communication skills have increased dramatically, where we were impressed with how he could label everything under the sun
And mimic, and now he's actually asking for things. He's making requests. He wants help, and sometimes he'll say specifically, help open. That would have been unheard of a few months ago.
Open. Hope. What do you want?
I don't remember this fascination with learning quite so much as the last few months.
Right.
And everything that he knows, he's always looking at us like, did you catch that I knew that? Did you see that I knew that was coming?
Are you hip to this?
Well, now it's gone. He's got it. Look at you being Mr. Trying to figure things out there. I know. That's cute. And then now it's there. Now it's there. You see it? That's hilarious. Ooh. Oh, really?
How do you differentiate or like try to figure out like what is the autism, what is his personality, what is
we don't understand at all, really, and I think really we won't understand fully unless we have a neurotypical child second. And I think as we go through stages, it'll bells will be ringing left and right. We'll be like, oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, actually, I still have trouble explaining it to friends or family when they ask, well, how do you know? I still have trouble explaining it. I know that we're right and that he's not misdiagnosed, but I still have trouble explaining it.
We look at each other all the time and say, is that 2 or is that autism? And I don't know that we ever answer it.
Probably our most common question to each other. Is that autism or is that 2-year-old? I don't know.
And I got both is probably what we usually say.
Yeah.
It's a little of both.
Yeah.
Baby.
What? Baby.
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 Mommy or baby? I don't know.
Baby.
Mommy. Baby. Mommy.
Papa.
Baby. Baby.
Papa. Baby.
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 Is he a baby too?
I'm not baby.
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 How does that affect everything now that you're pregnant, waiting for sister? Were you nervous when you first found out you guys were pregnant?
Well, yeah, we thought about it. I thought I would be more nervous about it all, but as I told a woman within probably less than a week of getting Jack's diagnosis, because we were already thinking about having another baby at that time, and asked her very honestly, are we crazy? Is this just a bad time to bring in another? Is this not fair to our son? Do we need to focus on him? And she led me through a few questions, and the ultimate thing I said was, I'll take 5 more just like him. And I would, in a heartbeat. He's great. He's
Maybe not 5.
I'll take 5 more just like him.
Okay.
You're happy with just 2.
I'm happy with 2.
No, he's a happy kid. Hasn't made him any less of a treat to watch him grow up and to watch him learn. He still is doing all those things. He might be doing them on a different timetable, but we haven't missed out.
But we
on
don't know the
anything.
timetable anyway, so we're good. We're golden.
Ignorance is bliss.
He's great. He's great, and now we feel like we're on the right track. I don't care what his timetable is. He's learning daily.
But I think that's the impression, as a parent for sure. Before you experience autism, you think of it as sort of, that everything's different.
Yeah.
And it is, but in a way, it's not at all. They're still kids, and they're still fun, and
I could still see him being like king of the prom.
sure,
He's a looker, good-looking guy.
he's charmed all his therapists.
And his cinematographer. and his mom and dad. We're going to the pool. We're going to the pool. We're gonna put our swimming suits on and we're going swimming. We're going to the pool.
Yay!
We're going to the pool.
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet?
My excitement's getting stronger.
We're going to the pool. We're going to the pool.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm so excited. Emily said I'm a little Twitter-pated. I am, because we have with us for the first time live here in the studio Dr. John Youngbauer. I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Youngbauer. And first of all, we want to welcome you being here. This is a very exciting thing for us. He is a BCBA with a PhD in developmental and child psychology. He has worked with persons of all ages, with and without disabilities, since 1972. Throughout his career, he has provided behavioral ABA training and consultation to public and private schools, daycare, work activity, residential, intermediate care, and independent living programs. So he's done the full gamut. Since 1998, Dr. Youngbauer has supervised behavioral services at the Northern Los Angeles County Regional Center, and has provided consultation, training, and technical support for community agencies. Additionally, he served on the DDS task forces for best practice guidelines for behavioral psychology, oral health, and DDS Advisory Committee for Autism Treatment, and the Advisory Committee for the Center for Autism Research and Treatment at UCLA. Dr. Youngbauer also teaches part-time graduate ABA classes at California State University, Northridge. If those aren't a stream of credentials, I don't know what would be. But I have to also say personally, and I've talked on this show, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, but when my child was diagnosed with autism, and I didn't know what we were going to do and how we were going to be able to help him. And what I found out was that ABA was going to help him. And I saw just a little smidge of what that price tag was going to be. And I said, oh my goodness, how on earth are we ever going to get from point A to point B, let alone point Z? And the regional center, I am a client of the Northern Los Angeles County Regional Center. And not to put too fine of a point on it, you saved our lives, and you gave me my child back. and you footed the bill. This is what you did, and you made it possible for me to be sitting here today and be a sane person and have a conversation with my child, because that would not have happened. And there are many people who are watching who don't have the benefit of a regional center because they're not in the state of California, and look on this and they say, tell us more about this regional center, because it's amazing. It's been a huge gift. You've got a tremendous legacy, Dr. Youngbauer, because I know I'm not the only parent who would love to hug you and say thank you.
You'd need really, really big arms, because because I certainly didn't do it alone.
Wow.
You know, there were an awful lot of people that set the occasion and made it possible for us to do what we did. And I say we because it was a we all the way along. Had I not the support of George Stevens, our executive director, Joan Daniels, Susanna Gill, and I made a mistake. I've now started naming names, and there's just too many.
It's like an Academy Award speech.
There's too many names to name, but these folks were all there, and the priorities, the commitments, the values, and the vision that these folks have. When I got to the regional center, that was there, and so I landed on very, very fertile ground. And then, you know, I can't take credit for much beyond that either, because the people I learned from, going back to my upbringing, you know, and I know one of the questions you're probably going to ask is, you know, I
do want to know, because this is personal to you, and I think that people need to understand that, you know, while you are this wonderful, credentialed expert in this field, it's personal to you, and you came into this field partially because it's personal. So if you know, and you don't need to tell us if you don't want to, but if you'd like to tell us what the personal connection is.
Well, the regional center just celebrated its 40th anniversary. I'm older than the regional center, although hard to believe.
So am I.
And when I was growing up here in Southern California, my youngest brother is blind and has autism. And that was fully 20 years before there was a regional center. And, for that matter, before Public Law 94-142 mandated public education. So what I saw in my family, and what I saw to be normal, a normal family, was a family with someone with special needs, a disability. But I saw my parents going to extraordinary efforts, trying to find services for my brother and educational opportunities for him, and they weren't there. Going from, you know, psychiatrist's office to any number of different professionals trying to find services that really weren't there, and even for that matter, my mother being told that really it's her fault because she was distant. Well, my mother could be accused of a few things, but distant was never one of them.
Okay.
And so I saw the difficulty my family had with it. And then when my brother was about 13 and there had been no school, even though they had banded together, we knew every parent within 20 miles that had a disabled kid and networked and so on. And we had kids at our house and parents for a week, and then we go to somebody else's for a week. You know, and a lot of people were doing that across the country. In 1954, for example, the San Fernando Valley Association, I think they've changed their name now. They've changed their name to New Horizons. But they were incorporated in 1954, 20 years before the regional center.
Wow.
And so my brother attended there, but when he got to be 13, he was bigger than my mother, and she There was nothing other than the state institution, and that was terrible. When I say terrible, it was terrible for our family, because we were essentially ripping a person out of our family to be, in an institution 65 miles away, and it was a terrible thing for everybody. I'm not saying that the place was terrible or the people there were terrible, but it was just a terrible event for all of us. And that's what set the occasion for the Lanterman Act. Because parents got to a point where, no, we're not going to take our children out of our home. We're not going to go out. They're not going to leave our community. We're going to do what we need to do to have our children go to the public school, participate in all the resources and assets that our community has, and there's no reason that they can't.
Absolutely. I want to pause there, because then I want to come back and talk about the Lanterman Act and how the regional centers were formed and what that has meant to so many of us. And then a little bit later on, we'll talk about how it's morphing and changing with insurance reform. But the regional centers are still there. So stick with us. We've got more with Dr. John Youngbauer after these messages.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to another Talk of Fact. We bring you the most common questions and share those answers that help your journey along for you and your family. One of the most common questions we hear all the time is, why are these doctors working with kids on the autism spectrum so expensive? Well, there's a simple answer. Kids with autism take more time, and unfortunately, if you look at a regular pediatrician's practice, they may see anywhere from 30 to 60 patients every day. So you may get at most 3 to 5 minutes with those doctors. With doctors that specialize in autism, they're called MAPS doctors, the Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. They spend quite more time with each family and each patient, and that could be an hour to an hour and a half for each family that is actually being spent just talking about your child, looking at labs. So why are they more expensive? Well, your pediatrician probably gets paid a lot more per hour based on the number of people they see. A MedMaps doctor is solely dedicated to what you're doing and what your child needs. So look at it this way. If you're spending time with your MedMaps doc and you're working with that doc, and you will literally on average see somewhere between 4 to 7 hours per year. And then don't forget that other fact we talked about, how to get the best possible health care reimbursement, so you can make sure that that time is well spent, not only getting answers but also reimbursed by health insurance. So there, another very detailed long fact from Talk of Facts.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're having a great day here. We're here with Dr. John Youngbauer from the North Los Angeles. I can't even say it. I'm a client of it, and I can't even say it. North Los Angeles County Regional Center.
There it is.
There we are. By the time we're done, I'll be rolling trippingly off my tongue. But in any case, he's here and talking with us about the Regional Center. And as I've talked to you many times before on the show, this is how I got the funding that we got for our son to have ABA, and which I attribute all the progress that we've had to having that funding and getting good quality ABA. Life-changing. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. It was absolutely life-changing. But I've asked Dr. Youngbauer to talk with us a little bit about how the Regional Center came to be. You know, so many other people are watching from other states, and they're saying, how did California have this come to be? Why doesn't every state have this? So talk to us a little bit about the Regional Center and how it came to be.
Well, it essentially came from the dedicated efforts of parents. That parents banded together, and again, they would not accept the notion that their child had to go to an institution. But this also was right on the heels of a great deal of social upheaval, and it was the Civil Rights Acts. So this was born in the 60s. And essentially, you know, the gestation period went through the 60s, and in the early 70s is when it was passed. And it was essentially Frank D. Lanterman who penned and championed the legislation, and hence the act is named after him. Now, he's passed, and I'm sure it would be much to his chagrin to know that one of the larger developmental centers, otherwise known as a state institution, has been named after him as well. I'm sure he's spinning in his grave with that one, but it was the legislation that he put forward that essentially kind of signed the doom on the institutions.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the Lanterman Act is for people with disabilities to live in their family home, grow up in their community, attend their local schools, and approach a regional center, which was designed by this legislation, to provide the supports and services that would allow a child to be a fully functioning member of his or her family, and access all community resources.
Yeah.
It was brilliant in its inception and design, and that brilliance really is reflected in the 21 regional centers up and down the state that have local boards of directors or trustees that set the policies, and the staff that sets the procedures to implement the Lanterman Act. So all 21 use the Lanterman Act as the foundational document in the legislation, but they all interpret it in reference to the unique needs of their community.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that, quite honestly, and that addresses, because I know there are different people depending on which regional center you're in. It's different circumstances.
Absolutely.
There are different things going on, so I didn't realize that they had different governing boards. That makes a little bit more sense to me. And so, but talk for just a second about the Lanterman Act and so what that covers, because people, somebody's watching in Kansas and they go, so does that mean that my child's covered till they're 5 or till they're 18, and what kinds of things does it cover? Because it's kind of fascinating.
Thanks for mentioning Kansas.
Well, you are wearing a Kansas lanyard there.
University of Kansas.
There we go.
First of all, California, unlike any other state in the Union, has this Lanterman Act. It's actually an entitlement program. So if an individual has a diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum or having intellectual disabilities or epilepsy or cerebral palsy that are substantially handicapping conditions, their eligibility is lifelong. It goes from essentially cradle to grave.
There's no aging out.
There's no aging out.
It's amazing.
Now, the thing is that, and we've seen this with some families with children with autism, that as much as they like us, they've had enough of us. And so what they do is they inactivate their cases, and they can reactivate them at any point in time when they need additional supports.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cradle to grave proposition. Now, the Lanterman Act and the regional center system, they're living entities. And as all living entities, they adapt to their environment, they change over time. And so we've seen an ebb and flow in terms of different services that can be provided. And certainly with some of the economic downturns, recently, in the last decade or so, there's been kind of a contraction of some of the services that the regional center can provide. There's also now been legislation that we've been seeing sweeping across the country with regard to insurance.
Yeah.
And insurance supporting the services. And so that's changed some of the options that we have at the regional center.
But there's a pretty wide variety, and has been, and maybe you're not carrying as many things now, but a pretty, I mean, there are things like respite. Definitely you guys cover ABA. You cover social groups, a wide variety of things. And I'm just aiming for the things that have to do with autism. I'm imagining for all the other different issues that a child or a young adult might come in with. It's just a wide variety. Right. I love that you guys look at the family and not just the individual. I think that that's really remarkable, and we don't see that in too many other places.
Well, I think it kind of reflects the legacy or the point of origin of the Lanham Act, that it really was families that banded together to make this occur. But we also know some other things, and I'm going to speak now as more of a behavior analyst.
Okay.
And that is that, speaking of legacies, the legacy of Mont Wolf, cannot be overstated.
Now, I don't know what Mount Wolf is. Tell me what
Mont Wolf, there were three people that wrote a seminal document and was published in 1968 in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. Mont Wolf was the first editor. And the document that they published was the Dimensions of Applied Behavior Analysis. And within that document, they laid out the blueprint for applied behavior analysis going forward. But Mont, and they were at the University of Kansas.
All right, we may have to get that Kansas plug in.
There it is. Now, the thing about it is that these three individuals, it was Don Baer, Todd Risley, and Mont Wolf. Those three. Now, they'd been other places. And the most recent place for most had been at the University of Washington. And it was at the University of Washington that Mont and his colleagues published the first application of operant teaching procedures with a child with autism. And in that first publication, it involved parents. That the child's behavior was at such a frequency and intensity that the family was no longer able to keep the child at home. And so they were essentially approached at the university if they could do something because this child really needed treatment. And so they started all the work in the state hospital and then moved it to the family home thereafter. But some of the things that they discovered were ground-shaking stuff. Mont Wolf identified the incredible power of adult attention on child behavior. There have been all kinds of theories about child rearing and so on, but that is absolutely ground-shaking because people up to that point had all kinds of theories about all kinds of things, but the notion that you can increase the frequency of a desired behavior by simply attending to it. Smiling at your child may reinforce the behavior your child is doing at that moment.
Yeah.
And you'll see more of that behavior. And the thing that Mont's most widely known for, or I should say is most widely known, is time out from positive reinforcement. Now, what people hear is they hear time out. They don't hear positive reinforcement. And I make that distinction because what Mont was talking about all along was time in. That really, we got to catch them doing the right stuff and celebrate the successes and turn this into a very, very positive, spiraling up interaction.
Love it.
Now, Mont, his colleague, Todd Risley, Todd describes the interactions, the parenting and child rearing, as an exquisite dance. But we know with kids on the autism spectrum, that dance is, it's a negotiation and it's a struggle as to who's going to lead this dance. I know that my brother shaped my parents' behavior every bit as much as they tried to shape his.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And we do that, and we do that, and that's what we try to teach people at the regional center. When we ask them to come in for an orientation, we try to explain that.
Well, it is pretty remarkable, and I want to take another break, but I do want to talk about that because you were somebody who came into the regional center, and my understanding from everything I've heard from everybody, you were the person who was pivotal and said, here is the game plan, and it involves the parents, and the parents have to understand how to do this, and shaped that part of this program and saw ahead that it was going to take the parents being involved to carry through. So I want to talk about that because I firmly believe that. I took that so to heart, and I still take that to heart, that as parents, I always say, there's a team of people, and your team is only as good as the weakest person on the team, and as the parent, you do not want to be that person.
Right. Absolutely not.
So you help to educate us, and so we're going to talk more about that. So stick with us. We're going to be back more with Dr. Youngbauer after these messages.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just.
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work. It's a movement. Unpredictable.
Abstract.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter. Fun. Joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're so thrilled and lucky that we have Dr. John Youngbauer here with us today, live in the studio. And he has come to us from the North Los Angeles County Regional Center. And I'm a client of that regional center here in California. You guys hear us talk about the regional center, the regional center, the regional center. And it's important here in California because it paves the way for a lot of people to get the services that they need. It's changing and shifting and growing, but we've been talking with Dr. Youngbauer about how this regional center came into being, and you mentioned this model of involving parents, because this really, you came into the regional center here in California, and you were the person who had the vision and said the parents have to be involved. If we're going to foot the bill for this, and I'm putting words in your mouth, so you stop me when, if we're going to foot the bill for this, the only way it's really going to be effective is if the parents learn it as well. Because if we have therapists that are going into the home and leaving and the parents can't do it, we're not going to get where we need to be. Is that pretty much what?
Right on the money.
Okay.
Right on it.
And a lot, I'm sure you took some guff for it because it didn't make it easy for families. It was hard. I mean, I'm going to be honest that finding the time for my husband and I to go to a 16-hour training when we had a child with autism that we were having to find somebody to be with, it was hard, but worth it. We got so much out of that 16 hours. By the end of that 16 hours, my child could sleep before 3 o'clock in the morning. So it was, right. So it was beneficial in that way, but it set us up for the success that we continue to have. I'm always appalled, frightened, I don't know. I feel bad for the families who, because it was hard, decided not to do it. and they see now where other kids got and that they didn't. And I feel bad for them because they had the opportunity to get the benefit of the therapy, but they had to invest themselves in it too. I wondered if you could talk just a little bit about what you've seen across this state with parents who get involved and who do learn this and the changes that they see in their children.
Well,
it's big, right?
Well, I got to figure out where I'm going to.
Where do you start?
My point of starting. Okay. Well, going back to the notion of how important adult attention on child behavior is. When I came back to California, because I am a native Californian, I did go to Kansas. I was there for 15 years working with Mont and Todd and all the great people there. But what I saw in Lawrence, Kansas, was the school district decided to implement an autism classroom. And again, they went to the university and they recruited some folks out of my department. And the first year, it was a small class. The next year, they had to double it, and then they had to double it again. Yeah. And so what was happening is people were moving from Wichita to Lawrence, and from Omaha to Lawrence, and from Kansas City to Lawrence, for their children to get these educational services. When I came out here, Todd Risley had gone back up to his native beginnings up in Alaska, and they put a program up in place. But in Alaska, I mean, the distances are far-flung.
Yeah.
So what they did is they would put their teams together, put them on a bush plane, hire a pilot, fly them into a village, and train the village. Now, this is getting back to the notion of how important it is to have everybody involved. It's incredibly important. What we're doing is we're creating treatment teams, and we're putting the responsibility for that team and the selection of the members of that team on the family. Families know what their schedules are. There's nobody that knows more about your child than you. So shouldn't you be the one to decide what vendor you're going to use and how the schedule is going to work? If it doesn't fit in your family, in your life, it's not going to maintain. It's not going to work. It's simply not going to work.
I feel like I want to say amen, because that's so important. And I appreciate you saying that. Being able, it's great to have the funding source, but to have that power to choose who you're going to have be your ABA provider is huge. That's a huge, huge privilege that I think most parents want. And that understanding of that it needs to work for your family is critical. And
Absolutely.
And so I love that you don't leave the family out of it in any way. But you had to advocate for that for all of the regional centers, did you not?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I'm popular in some places. Not so much in others.
I'm sure.
The thing about it is that, it's hard to argue with success.
Yes.
And I got here in '98, and what I saw in the way of behavioral services was minimal, and so. We had a number of things that set the occasion for a shakeup in the system. And one of those was in 2002, the recall of then Governor Gray Davis and Arnold Schwarzenegger coming into office. Mm-hmm. That was set by, again, an economic downturn with the power grid and the brownouts and stuff.
Yeah.
I was teaching a class on parent education at Cal State LA in the behavior analysis program. And what I did is I asked my students to go and get everything they could find on parent education and ABA. And we put all that information together and constructed a curriculum and burned it on a CD-ROM using a PowerPoint presentation format. And that was my gift to my students. Go out and be successful. Well, it so happened that that recall occurred. Everybody in the state was notified there's going to be massive cutbacks. And so I then contacted the behavioral vendors that we had, and I said, look, we got to redesign this deal. And we're going to have to just completely shake it up. But I also talked to Todd Risley, and I asked him to come down from Alaska, if he would, to take a look at what we've got and if he can make some suggestions. And he made some suggestions, and they were very resonant with the behavioral vendors. And he said, first of all, you got to explain to parents how this works. Behavior analysis is unlike any mental health services they have received up to this point. It's completely different. In behavior analysis, there are no spectators. Everybody's on the field.
Yeah.
And people have to know that right up front. So you got to put an orientation together, and this is why I think I get attributed more than I really deserve. And that is that Todd said, you got to have somebody that's willing to stand up there in front of everybody and tell them. And you got to have, that same person's got to say, if you got a problem, call me. So the buck's got to stop with the guy that puts it out.
Okay.
And so I looked around, I mean, there's just me.
So you became the person.
So I was it, yeah. And so we put that orientation together and started in January of 2002, and nobody showed up.
Oh.
And we did it again in February, and nobody showed up. And so in March, I said, it's got to be mandatory.
Yeah.
People showed up.
Yeah. I'm feeling a little cheated right now, because when I went and took my orientation, you weren't there. It was a woman with a thick accent.
Dr. Ballmeyer.
You must have been someplace else, and I feel cheated. I now want my orientation back again.
Well,
I'll come to one and be a spectator.
I typically do them all, but there are occasions, in the next 2 months are exceptions that my staff will be doing it. But at the time when we started this, it was pretty much me.
Okay.
I have a staff now.
I didn't get it, unfortunately. But I got all the benefit of all the rest of it, and that was the important part.
You're welcome. You can come back anytime.
All right, I will. I'll take you up on that. You think I won't, but I will. All right, we're going to take one more break, and then we're going to come back. And if you have questions for Dr. Youngbauer, you can be writing them in on our live feature. But we're going to come back and talk a little bit about how things have changed now that there's insurance, and how things continue to morph. Things are in flux right now with the regional center. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because I know we have parents that have questions about, well, you know, it was this way before, but now it's this way, and it's this way at one regional center. It's something different at another regional center. So stick with us. More after these messages.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. We're going to be working on identifying and labeling emotions. In February of last year, I know we did something super similar, but I promise you, for this project, it's going to be faster and easier, because part of the project you'll be printing from our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live. Well, here's the rest of the materials you'll be needing. Templates, scissors, crayons, and tape. The first step you're going to do is print the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have them right here, and I printed them double-sided. So now that I have all the pages printed out, I'm going to hand it off to my kiddo to have them color it in. So while they're coloring the face, you can of course work on identifying colors, labeling features, staying in the lines, and of course working on that pincer grasp. Once your child has finished coloring all the faces, you're going to take the pieces of paper and fold them in half. Once I have all the pages folded in half, I'm going to layer them together like a booklet. Now that I have them like this, I'm going to do is take my tape inside and kind of tape it together so they're bound together. If you have a stapler, you can do that too. Alright, now that this has been taped together, it looks like I have a book. So we're almost done with the project. All we need to do now is cut along the dotted line. Keep in mind, don't go all the way across to the edge, or else it's going to be cut into thirds and it's not going to be a solid book anymore. The other thing in mind is, you know, your kid can work on following a straight line while cutting, and if they can't do that, help them out. All right, my booklet now has been cut up, and as you can see, I can now take a tab and flip it, and it'll change the look of the face. And what you can do is, ask your child how the emotion of the face changes based on what parts of the features you changed. Well, I hope you had fun doing this activity with me, and until next time, craft on, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Dr. John Youngbauer from the North Los Angeles County Regional Center. See, I got it right the last time.
3 times a charm.
Yeah. But in any case, we are talking about what the regional center is in the state of California, how it came to be, how influential it has been in getting good quality ABA services for individuals on the autism spectrum here in California. And we're going to talk a little bit about how things have changed. But first, we wanted to cycle back about something about this parent training that you were putting into being with your students.
Well, I'd mentioned that I was teaching at Cal State LA, and that we put together an ABA curriculum for parents. When I did call the behavioral vendors, we talked about the need for that orientation to explain the system, but also that parents have heard all these behavioral terms. They've heard positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, timeout, all of that. But people don't uniformly understand what the principles really are.
Yeah.
And so I made available to all of our vendors that 16-hour curriculum to use in groups. Because for the most part, what was happening is the agencies are going out and they were spending the first allocation of all their hours just talking terms and explaining those basic things. We put it all together in a group. And what we then did is not only did we teach people, gave them a mini class in behavior analysis, but we created a support, a network. Because at the regional center, I can't share your address or name with anybody.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the downsides of the Lanterman Act in creating the regional center system. Rather than parents banding together so much, they then went to the regional center and they were kind of, in a sense, isolated. So the groups then set the occasion for people to get back in touch with each other, set play dates and other supports.
Interesting.
So those are 2 parts of the system that we put together at the regional center, was the orientation and then the groups.
Yeah.
What we then followed with was putting the services in place and having service coordinators come out and visit on a quarterly basis to talk with families and see how they're satisfied, to see how the services are being delivered, and as a measure of quality assurance.
Yeah.
With all the cutbacks that we've had in the last decade or so, our service coordinators, their caseloads are so large now that they can't do that. Yeah. And so that's been kind of a loss.
I think I get somebody that comes out once a year now.
Right.
And they'll come and they spend the afternoon with my son and I and ask a lot of questions and ask him questions, and it's actually a lovely visit. We talk about what we need and what we don't need and how we're doing, and it's really remarkable. But it used to be more often. I guess I hadn't realized it was actually much more often. And that brings me to our last point, which is that things have changed.
Yes.
Because they had to.
Yes.
Because California ran out of money. I mean, let's not put too fine of a point on it. There just wasn't, and as our as the prevalence raises and as the money in the budget for it went down, it changed the whole equation.
Yes.
So things are a little bit different now for the regional center, as you mentioned before, that you have less ability to offer the wide range, but you're still there and you're still offering services.
Well, there have been trailer bills that have essentially opened the door for many, many people beyond the regional center, even on the spectrum. And so I don't want to characterize the legislation as all of it being restrictive. But it has changed. It has changed how we do business.
Yeah.
Now, those folks that do have private insurance, and that insurance will then fund those behavioral services, we can assist. We can assist them with the co-pays. But they have to fall within the guidelines in terms of their income has to be less than 400% of the poverty rate. If it's more than that, then they assume the copays.
Okay. So there's a means test. You have to show that you have, you don't have the ability to pay for it on your own, and then you can get support from the regional center for copays. Does that go for deductibles as well?
No, right now the legislation precludes us from addressing any deductibles. That's been a real problem for many families.
Yeah.
And I believe there's a lot of effort at this point to either amend that legislation or possibly introduce additional legislation. But that's one of the things that's, I think, vexing for all of us, for everyone in the system, is the intent behind some legislation. Once it starts that legislative process, there's been many metaphors for that process.
Yeah.
What goes
and
in?
They're not all pretty.
No. So what goes in?
Sausage grinder.
It doesn't always come out quite right. And so, what we've had to learn is we have to learn with legislative ambiguity.
Yeah.
Ambiguity, I should say. We hope that it's going to go well, but we have to plan for all the contingencies.
Yeah, and of course you're not a fortune teller and you can't predict what's going to come out legislative, but you've had a vision and you talk about intent and that the intent is there for the regional center to be helping these families. What would you like to see happen?
Well, what I think I would like to see is that, I've got to acknowledge what is.
Okay.
What is that we've got a new player in the room with a lot of money, and that's the insurance companies.
Yes.
The field of applied behavior analysis, just like almost paralleling autism, it's growing. It's a growing field. The historical roots go all the way back to Ivan Pavlov, but the profession is growing, and so we've got lots of new people entering into the profession.
Yes.
And we have insurance companies that know very little about the profession. All of the people I've met on the various autism task forces, they're all well-intended, high-minded people, but they don't know how important the contingencies are. That it's the contingencies, it's that relationship between you do this and I do that, that makes it work or not.
Yeah.
The beauty of the Regional Center and the Lanterman Act is the whole idea of an IPP, an individual program plan that's tailored to the individual needs of the child and the family. That is something that I don't know is universally shared. And in a system that really was designed to provide care that has been viewed more from, we've got treatments and procedures and protocols that work for most everybody, and we'll use them that way. Well, that is kind of a one-size-fits-all sort of a mentality that is the antithesis of behavior analysis. The reason behavior analysis is successful is because it's designed specifically for the people that are pursuing it and wanting to gain something from it. That's a concept that we've got to transfer to insurance companies.
Yeah.
And we also have to build in that whole notion of having somebody going out and seeing how it's going.
I love what you're saying, because it's you're preaching to the choir here, because if I can paraphrase and tell me if I'm getting what you're saying, but quality ABA, not just ABA. We've got to have quality ABA, which means there's got to be some checks and balances about some of these new providers are not going to get the job done. And I, for one, hate it when parents are preyed upon by people who don't know what they're doing. And I think it would be remarkable if the regional center could be a part of that and overseeing and making sure that, what's being done is proper. I think we often look to you guys for more than just your purse. we look to you for the experience.
We hope that that's the case.
We hope that that's the case. We're literally out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being here and so much for the work that you've done and what it has meant to all of us. Personally, it's meant the world to me, what you have done, and I thank you for your service. And I hope that you're a long way from retiring. There's so much work left to be done.
Well, yes, indeed there is. Yes, there is.
We thank you so much. I'm just going to take 1 second here to remind everybody that tomorrow Dr. Doreen Grandpichet will be with us in the first hour answering questions, your questions. Then we're going to have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Dr. Andrew Levinson will be with us. And in our special third hour tomorrow, we will have David Humphrey with us. And everybody's going to be talking about cutting edge advances in the field of autism. So you won't want to miss that. Be with us tomorrow morning. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.